Well. Look who just became the problem they can't solve, the variable they didn't account for, the name that turned a boardroom into a battlefield. Welcome back. Or should I say, welcome to the moment everything shifted. Because right now, somewhere in a room you've never seen, people you thought had you figured out just realized they don't know you at all. Someone just stood up, pushed back their chair, looked around that table with genuine fear in their eyes, and said the words that change everything. We need to rethink everything. And the silence that followed? That silence was about you. Let's paint the picture properly, shall we? There's a conference table, polished wood reflecting anxious faces. There's a projector screen with your name on it. Maybe your performance metrics, maybe your recent moves, maybe just your presence in their world. There are people who thought this meeting would be routine, a quick discussion, a simple strategy session. But then someone said something. Maybe it was your numbers. Maybe it was your impact. Maybe it was the realization that every assumption they made about you was wrong. And suddenly, the room temperature dropped. Suddenly, notebooks closed. Suddenly, the person who thought they had all the answers stood up and admitted they have none. We need to rethink everything. 5 words, simple words. But in that context, in that room, those 5 words were a white flag, a surrender, an admission that their entire framework for understanding you just collapsed because they built their strategies on predictions and you became unpredictable. They based their moves on patterns and you broke the pattern. They thought they had you mapped, categorized, contained, and then you did something they never saw coming. You evolved while they were busy planning. You transformed while they were still strategizing. You became the answer to a question they didn't even know they should be asking. And now? Now they're scrambling. Now the confident ones look confused. Now the decision makers look paralyzed. Now the ones who smiled at you last week are wondering if that smile is going to cost them something later. Because this meeting wasn't supposed to end like this. It was supposed to end with clarity, with direction, with everyone nodding in agreement about how to handle you. Instead, it ended with chaos. It ended with someone walking out. It ended with the realization that you are not a problem they can solve, with their usual tools, their standard procedures, their comfortable assumptions. You want to know what triggered it? It wasn't one thing. It was the accumulation. It was the way you've been moving differently, thinking differently, showing up differently. It was the results they couldn't ignore. It was the reputation that started building outside their control. It was the conversations happening about you in rooms they're not invited to. It was the sudden awareness that while they were watching you from one angle, the world was seeing you from another, and their angle was wrong. Completely, embarrassingly, devastatingly wrong. And someone in that room finally had the courage or the fear to say it out loud. Here's what you need to understand. That meeting was supposed to be about controlling you, containing you, predicting your next move so they could counter it. But midway through, the script flipped. Suddenly, it wasn't about you anymore. It was about them, about their miscalculations, about their outdated strategies, about the gap between who they thought you were and who you actually are. And that gap is massive. That gap is a canyon they just realized they can't cross. So someone stood up, because sitting in that room pretending they had answers felt more dangerous than admitting they don't. We need to rethink everything. Let that sink in. Everything. Not just their approach, not just their tactics. Everything. Their entire perception of you. Their assumptions about your limits, their predictions about your trajectory, their understanding of your motivations, their belief that they could read you, manage you, outmaneuver you. All of it shattered. And the beautiful, poetic justice of this moment is that you didn't have to say a word. You didn't have to defend yourself. You didn't have to prove anything. Your actions, your results, your evolution spoke so loudly that it silenced an entire room. Think about the timeline here. Weeks ago, maybe months ago, you were the topic of casual conversation. Easy to dismiss, easy to underestimate, easy to file away under handled or not a threat, or we know exactly what they're about. They had you in a box. A neat, comfortable, predictable box. And they checked on that box occasionally, nodded in satisfaction, and moved on to other concerns. But somewhere along the line, the box started shaking, and they ignored it. Then the box started cracking, and they made excuses. Then the box exploded, and now they're standing in the debris, looking at each other, asking how this happened. You happened. That's how. You refused to stay in their narrative. You refused to play the role they assigned you. You refused to be the person their spreadsheets predicted you'd be. And every time they tried to adjust their models to account for you, you'd already moved 3 steps ahead. Every time they thought they'd figured out your pattern, you introduced a new variable. Every time they prepared a response to what they thought you'd do, you did something else entirely. And now, after all that, after all their analysis and all their planning, they're back at square one. Worse than square one, because now they know their tools don't work. The person who walked out, that person might have been the smartest one in the room, because staying in that meeting would mean continuing to pretend they have control they don't have. It would mean nodding along while everyone else builds new strategies on the same broken foundation. It would mean complicity in the delusion that they can still predict you, still manage you, still fit you into their frameworks. And some people, when they see the truth clearly enough, can't play along anymore, so they leave. They walk out, and their exit becomes the loudest statement in the room. But let's talk about the ones who stayed. The ones who are still sitting there, staring at their notes, trying to salvage something from this disaster. They're the dangerous ones now. Not because they're smart, not because they have a plan, but because they're desperate, and desperate people make reckless moves. They'll try to speed up timelines. They'll try to force reactions from you. They'll try to provoke you into revealing your strategy, because they've run out of ways to predict it. They need you to make a mistake so they can feel in control again. They need you to slip so they can say, "See, we knew it all along." Here's the truth that's keeping them up tonight. You're not making mistakes, you're making moves. Calculated, patient, strategic moves. And the difference between a mistake and a move is that a move serves your purpose, not theirs. Every time they expected you to react, you responded. Every time they expected you to defend, you advanced. Every time they expected you to shrink, you expanded. And they've been so busy looking for your weaknesses that they completely missed your strengths. So now they're sitting in meetings, rethinking everything, because the game changed and they're still playing by old rules. You know what's really eating at them? It's not just that they were wrong, it's that they were publicly wrong. That meeting wasn't private. Those words weren't whispered. That moment of collective realization wasn't contained. Other people saw it. Other people heard it. Other people now know that the experts, the strategists, the decision makers, they got you wrong. And in their world, being wrong about something this significant, that's not just embarrassing. It's career altering. It's reputation damaging. It's the kind of thing that makes other people question everything else they've said, every other prediction they've made. So yes, someone walked out saying, "We need to rethink everything." But what they really meant was, we underestimated them. We misread them. We built our entire strategy on a version of them that doesn't exist. And now we're exposed. That's the real translation. That's the real fear. Because rethinking everything means admitting everything up until now was wrong. And people like that, people who build their identities on being right, on being ahead, on being in control, admitting they're wrong breaks something fundamental in them. It fractures their confidence. It undermines their authority. It makes them question not just you, but themselves. And here's where this gets beautifully ironic. While they're busy rethinking everything about you, you don't have to rethink anything about yourself. You know who you are. You know what you're capable of. You know where you're going. Their confusion isn't your problem. Their crisis isn't your responsibility. Their desperate need to categorize you, to understand you, to predict you, that's their burden, not yours. You're free from their frameworks, free from their expectations, free from their need to make you fit into boxes that were always too small for you anyway. Let's dig deeper into what that meeting revealed, because it wasn't just about you, it was about them, about their systems, about their limitations, about the fact that their entire approach to understanding people is flawed. They rely on data, on patterns, on historical behavior, and all of that works beautifully when dealing with predictable people. But you're not predictable. You're adaptive. You're evolving. You're someone who learns, who grows, who transforms. And their systems can't account for transformation. Their models can't predict evolution. Their strategies can't contain someone who refuses to be the same person twice. So when someone stood up and said, "We need to rethink everything," what they were really confronting was the limitation of their own thinking. They were admitting that the tools they've relied on, the frameworks they've trusted, the strategies they've deployed, they don't work on you. And if they don't work on you, what else are they wrong about? Who else have they underestimated? What other opportunities have they missed because they were too busy fitting people into predetermined categories? That's the real chaos that meeting ended in. Not just confusion about you, but doubt about everything. And you want to know the most satisfying part? You didn't set out to break their systems. You didn't wake up trying to prove them wrong. You were just being yourself, growing, learning, evolving, pursuing your goals, living your life. And somehow, just by being authentically, unapologetically yourself, you became the variable that broke their equations. You became the case study that invalidated their theories. You became the example that exposed their expertise as limited. Not because you tried, but because you existed outside the boundaries they tried to impose on you. Now let's talk about what happens next, because this is where it gets really interesting. They're going to try to study you harder. They're going to try to find new patterns. They're going to collect more data, run more analyses, hold more meetings. And all of that effort, all of that energy, all of that focus on you, it's not making them stronger. It's making them weaker. Because every hour they spend trying to figure you out is an hour they're not spending on their own growth. Every strategy they build around containing you is a strategy that's already obsolete by the time they implement it. Every prediction they make is based on who you were, not who you're becoming. And while they're paralyzed by analysis, you're moving. While they're debating strategies, you're executing yours. While they're rethinking everything, you're building everything. The gap between you and them isn't closing, it's widening, and they feel it. That's why the meeting ended in chaos. That's why someone walked out. That's why the ones who stayed looked shaken. Because they can feel the momentum shifting. They can sense the control slipping. They can see the future taking shape, and in that future, they're not the ones determining your trajectory. You are. Here's what they'll never understand. You're not their competition. You're not their rival. You're not playing the same game they are. They're playing chess, moving pieces, thinking 3 moves ahead. You're playing a different game entirely. One they don't have rules for. One they don't have strategies for. One they can't win because they don't even understand how to keep score. And that dissonance, that fundamental mismatch in understanding, that's what creates the chaos. That's what makes them rethink everything. That's what makes their meetings about you turn into meetings about their own inadequacy. Let's address the fear, because fear is the real emotion driving that chaos. They're afraid of what you represent, not who you are as a person, but what you symbolize. You represent the possibility that their entire worldview is wrong. that their methods are outdated, that their authority is fragile, that their control is an illusion. You represent change they can't manage, growth they can't contain, success they can't explain. And when people's entire identity is built on being the ones who manage, who contain, who explain, someone like you becomes an existential threat, not because you're threatening them, but because your existence threatens everything they believe about how the world works. So they had a meeting. They tried to solve the problem of you, and midway through, someone realized, you're not the problem. Their inability to accept that people can exceed their predictions, that's the problem. Their need to control outcomes they have no right to control, that's the problem. Their assumption that everyone operates by the same playbook they do, that's the problem. And when that realization hit, when the real problem became clear, the only honest response was to walk out. Because you can't solve a problem by fixing the wrong thing. You can't rethink your strategy when your entire premise is flawed. And now, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you're living rent-free in their minds, not because you're trying to, not because you care, but because they made you central to their concerns, their strategies, their meetings. They elevated you to that position. They gave you that power. And now, they can't take it back. Every decision they make, they'll wonder, how will this person respond? Every strategy they deploy, they'll question, will this work on someone this unpredictable? Every move they make, they'll second guess, are we still underestimating them? That's the real victory here. Not that you won some battle, not that you proved something, but that by simply existing, by simply being yourself, by simply following your own path, you became the standard against which they measure their own effectiveness. You became the test case that determines whether their strategies work. You became the benchmark that exposes their limitations. And they did that to you. They gave you that role. They created that dynamic. And now they're living with the consequences of making you more important than you ever asked to be. So here's your crown, polished by their panic, forged in their fear, carried by their chaos. They wanted to understand you. They wanted to predict you. They wanted to control you. And in trying, they revealed everything about themselves and nothing about you. Because you remain, as you've always been, beautifully, powerfully, undeniably, beyond their comprehension. Someone walked out of that meeting saying they need to rethink everything. But you don't need to rethink anything. You just need to keep being exactly what they can't handle. Yourself, unfiltered, unstoppable, unapologetic. The meeting ended in chaos, but your story is just beginning. And this time, you're not the subject of the meeting. You're the author of the narrative. Class dismissed.